when you're 18 years old, you're not thinking about your return on investment. All you're thinking is, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to pay for it however I can, which if it's student loans, it's student loans, right? And it's so easy to get student loans. I remember distinctly how I borrowed my first student loan. I got an email from the financial aid office. It says, congratulations, you got financial aid. Notice they don't say student loans, they say financial aid. I click this email, I open it up, it opens up the university website, right? I log in, it says, click here to accept your financial aid. And you have to select what you want, which you are actually selecting student loans. You got to put 2 and 2 together to know that. And then you click through a few more screens, you scroll through like a terms of service agreement, like whoever reads the terms of service, we all see those every day. And then you hit I accept. It says, congratulations, you're all set.
This is the Personal Finance Show.
Hi, I'm Bo Humphreys, and this is the Personal Finance Show. Robert Farrington wants you to think before you click the button and accept your student loans. Getting an education is an investment, and you should spend some time thinking about what you're investing in and what kind of return your investment will provide. For example, you may not even need a degree at all to work somewhere you like and that pays well. You may need a degree to get promotions and more responsibility later, but that might not be for a while, and who knows, your employer might even help pay for your schooling. We've been brainwashed over the years that to get a good job, you have to spend a lot of money on school and then eat ramen noodles while living in a tiny apartment and work 12-hour days to repay your loans. After the interview with Robert, I realized that some part of me is still brainwashed, and it actually scared me a little. Robert worked at Target for over 16 years. He mentioned this right at the beginning of the interview, and I totally didn't hear him say that he only stopped working there 2 years ago. So I kept asking him questions like, so what was your next job? Not fully comprehending that he was always at Target until he decided that he was making enough from his side hustles and he wanted to spend more time with his family. I realized that there's this part of me that still finds it hard to believe that someone would work in retail for that long, and it's scary to think that I have these notions in my brain somewhere when I don't actively believe this is true. But on autopilot, the notion that guided me to my next questions were that he must have got a better job. No one works at Target for 16 years. It really sucks, but it seems I've been brainwashed to think that this is not a good job, without even knowing what it is that Robert even did there for 16 years. Of course, there are people who spend their whole lives in retail and are very happy. Robert actually ended up with a lot of responsibility, managing several hundred employees and millions in sales. But he shouldn't be any less valuable to me as a human being if he simply pushed carts and stocked shelves for 16 years instead. Especially when on the side he was building a web empire that now has millions of visitors per month. Even more ironic is that I've been driving for Uber since last September. And I'm sure there are people that think it's odd that someone with a university degree and 15 years working in accounting and finance would be an Uber driver. But I actually really like it, and it fits with my flexible schedule. I decided that even though all of this makes me seem like a classist jerk, I needed to talk about it. Maybe you do this too and you don't even realize it. Talking about it openly is the only way to shake off these archaic notions about what is good or bad, what is the right path, and all the other societal norms that seem to only cause us to spend money we don't have and take jobs we don't want. So, as Robert suggests, before we just press a button and fund our future with debt, we need to spend more time thinking about what it is we want. Are you going to be able to pay back this debt? What kind of job will you get after you graduate? If you're going to take on tens of thousands in debt, shouldn't you at least have a general answer to these questions? Why is the default, get the loan and figure it out later? Personally, I think we have it all backwards. We should try working in jobs in our areas of interest or curiosity, make some money, and then take whatever training or schooling is necessary to move forward in that area of work if we enjoy it. Why is a 4-year degree the thing that everyone cares about? Logically, it doesn't make sense. Most people hire someone who works well with others, and then train them how to do the job. We're focusing on the wrong things, and it's creating a society that is trapped by huge amounts of debt. As Robert wrote in a post on his site, The College Investor, student loans should be your last option. If you do decide that you want to go to school before you have enough money to pay for it, there are so many options to explore before going straight to student loans. If you or someone in your family is in the process of deciding how to pay for school, I fully recommend going to thecollegeinvestor.com and reading everything you can. Robert joined me from his home in Southern California to share his personal finance story.
My earliest money memory is probably in middle school. I was the kid that liked to earn money, right? And so I remember selling candy bars at break time and lunchtime to earn extra money so that I could go to Blockbuster when Blockbuster still existed and rent video games when I was not in school. And so my mom would take me to Costco and we'd buy like the 24 pack of candy bars, right? And then I would resell them individually at school, and I would double my money, and then I'd reinvest, and next week I'd go back to Costco and I'd buy another pack. And so, I was making like $5-10 every single week, but, it gave me that extra spending money because, I wanted to rent video games. That's what I did in middle school. And my parents weren't about to give me the money, so I had to earn my own money. And that's probably one of my earliest money memories.
How'd you get your parents on board to do this? Like, because you needed their help to go get the bulk stuff at Costco, and then what did they think of your reselling?
Well, I think originally they were skeptical, right? But
Sure.
I know they fronted me the money, and
Okay.
I paid my mom back, and it worked. And so after the first time, it was okay as long as you want to keep doing this, and you're paying for it, whatever. If it's either going to work out or it's not going to work out. But it really is only $5 or $10, and I think they appreciated that a lot more than me hounding them. I want to go rent a game.
Good point.
I want give me $10. Versus hey, I want to go earn $10, help me out here. And so I think that was a little better approach. And honestly, this is my earliest money memory, but I'm sure there was lots of begging for money prior to this memory. I don't have that memory, right? I've blocked that out as an adult.
Of course. Do you think that being denied of the begging, that motivated you to think of these ideas, or do you have entrepreneurs in the family? How'd you get this idea?
We don't. I mean, honestly, my family, it was always good with money, fine with money. Honestly, I do have early memories of my dad too. I remember he had Quicken on this old PC.
Okay,
and
wow.
He would pay his bills and update Quicken the old-fashioned way, entering the checks in the register. And I used to sit in his room in the office area, and I'd watch him pay bills, and I'd be curious about it. And my parents, they were always good with money, so it was I had a good thing to watch and learn. But they also weren't necessarily giving me all the money. They were very much you have to earn the money. You have to do something for the money. They did give me some allowance, but the allowance was tied to doing chores. I had to go mow the lawn if I wanted to get $5, or I had to go do something. So it was never just free money.
Do you think that is a bad thing for kids to be given money for luxuries like a video game?
I think they definitely need to earn it. I think there's a baseline. We should always make sure that kids have clothes and food and,
Sure.
school essentials, but there's the luxuries that they need to earn somehow, and they need to learn what the value of something is, especially if it's a cost to the parent. There's not a limitless supply of money as much as we'd all like to have it, right? And so we definitely need to correlate time and effort and value for kids because they don't have that understanding of it.
Yeah, and I think some parents, they're trying to be good parents by giving their kids everything, but really it's not working out that way, right? They're being nice, they're not making their kid work hard, but then it's going to affect them in the future.
Right. I'm a dad of young kids. So, I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and it's hard. The harder thing is trying to see them struggle and fail. But on the flip side, you have to remember in your mind that that struggle and that sometimes that failure is what actually helps them the most, not just giving them everything on a platter. But it's hard. It is a very hard thing to do. So I don't necessarily blame parents that want to give everything, but you do got to remember that we got to teach the kids how to work for it and earn it and things like that.
Seriously, you are living my future. Well, not with 2 because we only have 1, but 4 months old. He's very, very young, and we're like, you're talking about, hard decisions to make. I had trouble like letting him cry it out in the crib. I'm like, no, we should just go get him. Let's just go pick him up, right? Like if I can't handle this, oh man, right? So
Exactly.
let's
so like I don't blame
right?
the parents. I don't blame parents.
No,
at
I don't
all,
blame them either.
But on
Yeah.
the flip side, like you gotta let them try. You gotta let them fail. You gotta let them struggle. You gotta let them understand what value means, because they're not getting that anywhere else except for what they see in the home.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're learning about working for money really early, which is, it seems to be a commonly great thing to learn early when it comes to money. It helps you throughout your life. Very entrepreneurial. Did the school end up putting a stop to it?
Yeah, I do remember like they were like a little like I remember duties, right? Like the duties were like, no, you shouldn't be like hustling out of your backpack selling candy bars. But it was a good run while I had it.
So you moved to the sidewalk and said, well, I'm not technically on school property, right? Like the scalpers, right?
Exactly.
No, you didn't go there? You didn't go.
No, I didn't go there. But you know what? It was a good run while we had it there.
Did this lead then to you, is the next time you earn money for real, like an actual job?
So my parents were very into playing the card game Bridge, and they would go on the weekends to like a bridge studio, and they'd play against all these other people, and there would be like tournaments, and I mean it was like a big thing. And I just remember too,
big.
so like after like middle school, I was probably like 13 at the time. I guess that's probably still middle school age. I was a caddy, and what the caddy would do is I would collect the cards, I would pass out the cards, I would take their scorecards and enter them into the computer. I would like just basically be like the errand boy. But like I was making like, I think it was like $5 an hour, and so like for like an afternoon I was getting like $20-$25 for doing
good.
this. And it was really, it was my choice. It was like I either go with my mom and go down and caddy for bridge, or I just sit at home alone and play Legos or not have any money for video games because I didn't go out and earn it, right? So the question was, what do I want to do? And so I remember doing that quite a bit, and I was doing that consistently for a few years, just caddying at the bridge studio and earning extra money that way.
What a very specific thing. Like, people say caddy, you think golf, of course, but caddy for bridge. Yeah, I didn't even know that was a possibility. So you're getting spending money at this point. You're like a new teenager. When do you get a job somewhere else where you're maybe earning some money that can enable you to do a little more than just pocket money?
Yeah, so my first job, my real, quote-unquote real job, right, is I started at 16. My mom bought me a truck, like a really old beat-up truck for like $2,500 when I turned 16. Okay. I was stoked, right? Like this dented-up truck comes into the driveway. My mom's like, I bought you a truck. It like barely ran. It had a lot of issues, but it was a free truck for me, right? And she's like, if you want it, though, you have to pay for your gas and your insurance, so you better go get a job. And I don't even know why we didn't even take the truck, but she took me to the mall and dropped me off at the mall and was like, call me when you get a job and I'll come pick you up.
Seriously, that's how it happened? She's like, just here's where you get jobs.
Exactly. So she took me to the mall, our local mall, and I remember very distinctly, I started, like Starbucks is at one end and Target was at the other end, right? And so I started at Starbucks and like I applied, and then I just kept walking down different mall stores, and then I ended at Target, and Target interviewed me on the spot and hired me, and literally that's how I started working at Target, and that was like my first real job, and I did that all the way through high school until about 2 years ago. So.
That's so random. It's like
right?
you're not like sitting at home thinking, "Oh, I'd love to work at Target," or it's just like I'll work wherever they hire me.
100%. I just needed a job to earn money so that I could drive my new truck. Like
that's amazing.
It's very fundamental. Like I just need to earn, right? Like
I'm liking your mom right now. Like she's buying you this truck as and then gives you the incentive. Like you're like, oh, awesome truck. Well, you need a job though, right? Yeah. It's like she was subtly manipulating you, which is so awesome. What an incentive though, because like not everybody has. I think a lot of kids don't have incentives to get jobs.
Exactly. And I honestly very much value the fact that I worked early. And, I didn't necessarily put this value on it then, but like fast forward to now.
Sure,
and that early working and being able to work while I was in high school, because I was working about 20 hours a week while I was in high school. Luckily, I was like in my like last years of high school. And so I would get out every day at like, I think my senior year, I was getting out of school at 12:30 because I only had like
nice.
4 or 5 classes, right? So I'd get out at lunchtime and then I'd go work from like 2 to 6 every day, and then like I'd be done. So I'd still be done with my day at like 6 p.m. and I'd still have the nights and whatnot. So, but being able to balance working and going to school and learning things like business communication and business problem solving and things like that, like those were much more valuable skills than taking AP calculus in high school. Nothing against that, but like, I've never used calculus since then, right? And I definitely use my business communication and problem solving skills every day.
Absolutely. Do you know, like, are there incentives to go and get actual jobs? Like, are there classes and stuff like that for high school students?
They make it very hard because, at the end of my Target career, I was hiring a lot of people, right? And, even working a retail job is the restrictions make it very hard, and they don't incentivize employers to hire young adults. So
really?
in California here where I'm based is if it's a school day, you couldn't employ a minor more than 3.5 hours.
Oh, really?
Right. And if it was a non-school day, they could work 8 hours. But they also include Sundays to be a day before a school day. And so it was that 3.5 hour rule again. So if you're so if you're an employer, though, hiring someone for just 3.5 hours can be very challenging. And so for me, it wasn't a question that I didn't want to hire minors. Like, I love to actually hire young kids. Like, they had energy. Like, it was my story. Like, I really wanted to hire more young adults. But the laws made it so difficult to employ them in an effective way that it just was very challenging to find places that you could actually have minors work that would be conducive to your business. And this is a retail store, and I can't imagine what it would be like in other stores.
Yeah, so like we're trying to give kids opportunities to learn this stuff early, which is so valuable now.
Totally.
But there's so many roadblocks in there.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's probably why a lot of kids don't get actual jobs until maybe university, and not even because, of course, if a parent or someone is paying for, and again, in the U.S., way more expensive, a university, why would they want the person to go and work and not make the most of this $100,000 or whatever it is they're paying?
Exactly. I mean, it's a catch-22, right? Like, they need to work, and we need them out there, but we make it hard for them to work. And then on the flip side, like, if they've never worked, they are, scared. Psychological barriers are there too, working. They don't know if they can work and balance during school, whereas kind of like I was forced into it, and so I know it's doable. But I look at someone else that might never have been exposed to it. It's not necessarily so much that they can't do it, but, there's probably some mental blocks there to being able to do it as much as there's not a financial need per se.
Well, high school seems like the best time because it's like the consequences are so low. What if like if you don't pass calculus, you take it again in the summer? I don't know. It's not going to ruin your life, right?
Oh, but see, for you now, both of us are past that phase, so it doesn't ruin lives. But when you're living that moment, it ruins your life, right?
Yeah,
like you have to like think about that because that is all there is in the world, and your friends are going to make fun of you, and your family's going to put shame on you, and your whole life is ruined at 17 because you didn't pass calculus, which we know is a total farce, but that's how you feel in the moment, right?
Yeah, kids are terrible. I'm so far past that I've forgotten, right?
Right.
Oh,
like,
man.
It's make or break in high school. Every moment counts.
So you got to be able to do school and I don't know, maybe you start slow. I don't know what the right answer is here. So you worked at Target and you did well enough in high school?
Yep. I mean, I graduated near the top of my class. I went to college. I actually really struggled my first quarter of college. I was still working full time. I was on academic probation. I didn't fail anything.
Okay.
But I had 2 C- and a C+, which, averages to like a 1.9 GPA, which is less than like your 2.0. And so like I was like I got these nasty emails like, you're on academic probation. Like, if you don't like fix yourself, like we're going to kick you out. And Granted, I figured it out and I improved dramatically from there on out and graduated with honors by the time I was done. But it was a game changer. Like, it was very different than high school, and it took me a little bit to figure it out.
Were you still working at Target?
I worked all the way through, and I actually started working close to full time when I went to college. So I was working 32 to 40 hours a week while I went to college.
Okay, so who paid for school? How was that paid for?
By myself, a little bit of help from my parents, and student loans.
So the money you're making at Target, were you able to save a lot of that then?
I saved some of it. I didn't save a lot of it. A lot of it was going to living expenses in college and, having fun. But, I did, as soon as I was eligible for my 401k, I put 5% in. And I was saving a little bit here and there. And honestly, I was more saving because I was very passionate about investing and, kind of seeing my money grow. So I'd put in like $100, $200 every month into like an investment account, and I would trade stocks and things like that, which I've since learned a lot of lessons, which is one of the reasons that propelled me to start the blog. But I was saving a little bit, but I was also losing some in the stock market and learning some lessons that way as well.
Because you didn't talk about any of this stuff with your parents or anything, right? Investing?
I watched my dad's portfolio on Quicken when I was a kid, but like I didn't talk to him about it, and they definitely didn't know that I was like, trading stocks in college. Like I wasn't talking to them about it. Wasn't really talking a ton about money with them at that point in time.
Yeah, why do you think that is? Was it like a bad thing to trade stocks when you're that young, or?
I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing to trade stocks. I do think it's a bad thing to trade stocks. But on the flip side,
too, but
when you're young, it's like I think it's the best time to learn some hard lessons when you're early on. So I actually had a problem, and my problem is different than most. Is some of the first stocks I ever picked, I knocked it out of the park.
Okay,
like I'm talking like I turned $200 into like $2,500, and so seeing like huge gains. I did a great job. Right? Which that gives you like really extreme confidence when you're like 19 years old that like I'm a stock genius.
You're a stock genius. Yeah. Okay.
And then you learn some hard lessons about like, no, I'm actually not. Like I just had some early wins that were probably very bad for my confidence and knowledge and pocketbook. Right?
Well, that's an interesting parallel. I'm sure I've mentioned I went through a long gambling addiction, and the early wins are a big thing that propels people into gambling in the first place. And it's just so did it have any like really negative effects on you, or was it just like you didn't do so well later on?
It just didn't do so well. So like, I kept it to what I had. Like, the one thing that's hard about, being 19 years old is you're not being able to take out credit. You're not necessarily being able to trade a ton on like margin when you don't have a lot of money in your investment account.
Good.
So like, there's no debt going on from it, but it was like, I took like 200 to 2,500, and then a year later my account's back down to like 1,200, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like it just never it never repeated the success. But on the flip side, like that propelled me to start my blog, that propelled me to learn more about how you should be investing, how you should be saving. And then I've, since changed my philosophies around how you should invest for the long term and all the other stuff that you hear on every personal finance podcast about low-cost index funds and long-term investing.
Of course.
But I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, and we'll get to that, of course.
Sure.
But at this point, you're just figuring it all out. And so that you made an interesting point that you weren't at risk for using debt because of your age. Was it 21 in the States for credit cards?
When I was in college, I think it was still 18, but they've since changed the laws to like be 21, and they have all these things where you can't market credit cards on campus and a lot of different variables.
Okay. But you couldn't have a margin account. You weren't allowed to have that?
I think I could have, but I also don't think I had enough money in my investment account where they would approve it, right?
You weren't big enough, yeah.
I wasn't, I had like $2,000, at the peak at this point in time. And so it's like, okay, maybe they would have given me 1,000, but like I don't even think I knew how to do that or much about that yet, right?
You knew like you could only use the money that you had. And was this extra money, or was it money that you could have like spent on things? Or
this was definitely extra. I mean, this was money I had from my earnings. So like when I was working at Target, and I was putting like $50 to $100 in every month or every 2 months when I had some extra money. And I was using that to invest and trade with.
And then so you have these student loans though.
I do. So like that's the interesting thing. So like I had savings and investments. But like everyone just said, like how you pay for college is borrowing. So like I also had student loans. It wasn't like trying to eliminate my debt or live debt free, because like I just didn't have that mindset or knowledge. So it was like I was borrowing to pay for college, and I was still working and earning and saving a little bit over here on the other side too.
Well, what's a typical interest rate? Well, then or today, if you get student loans.
I think my interest rate then was like 6.4% or something like that. And today I think it's gone down a little bit. I think the new interest rates are like 4.55% for federal student loans, which is all I had. I only ever took out federal student loans to pay for college.
You have to pay that interest right away?
That's the crazy part. So when you're in school, your loans are deferred. So the interest still accrues and your loan grows, but you don't have to pay it.
Everybody thinks that nothing's happening to it, and then you get this big balloon at the end.
Right. And so that's like when I was set in, like when I graduated, and you have 6 months of deferment after you graduate too. So like when I actually started repaying my loans, it had grown up to about $42,000, $43,000, the high water mark of my loans.
So did you then get a job or are you still working full time like at Target?
So I still worked full time at Target, and I got promoted. And so luckily I got I think my first job, or my first assistant manager role, I was making $42,000 a year. So I was stoked, right? Like I had this debt. I didn't really care too much about it. Everyone has student loans, right? That was my mindset.
Yeah, sure.
But I just like doubled my salary. I was making $42,000 a year at 22 years old. Like, this is good stuff right here.
That's actually not bad. That's I think I started at 30 something. I'm sure at that age.
Yeah, exactly. And then I got some raises pretty quick. So I think within 2 years I was over 50. I was at maybe like 50, 55. So I was feeling pretty good after I graduated. So much so that I even went out and bought myself a new car. Which is another like folly of personal finance. But you live these lessons and you learn it, right? Because I was the shit at that point in time.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds good, right? And are you able to maintain your payments on the student loans? And is everything being taken care of? Is that all happening?
I mean, I was working. I was paying my loans. I was paying my car. I also was big on side hustling. So my side hustling never stopped, right?
Yeah.
So like I started the blog. At this point in time, too, I was very big into reselling stuff on eBay. So I was going to garage sales and estate sales and selling stuff on eBay. And my side income at that time was about $1,000 to $2,000 a month just from my side hustle. So between my earnings and my side hustling, everything was good.
Yeah. Okay. So you're doing good. Is there a point where it goes wrong? It goes wrong?
There's not a point that goes wrong, but this is also when my wife and I were getting serious and dating. And I'll tell you that I'm big into the earn more. If you haven't heard that yet in my voice, I like the side hustles. I like the earning. Yeah. But she's the financial analyst of the family.
Okay.
So she's the savvy one, and I give her full credit. And she just kind of like sits down, and we're starting to mingle our money, and we're looking at each other's finances. And she's like, why the heck do you still have these student loans? Like, why aren't we paying these off? And why do you have this car loan? Like, why don't we pay that off? Like, why don't we make some goals here and start like really like snowballing and throwing all this extra money into these debts and get debt free? And so she was really the catalyst.
I see.
In my early 20s after college, when we were making some good money, at least for that point in time, to like start eliminating this debt. Yeah.
So because you're doing great, you're making money, but like you still have lots of debt, and are you able to save? Like, are you saving any of it? Like,
I was still fiddling around with investments. So I was still putting money in my 401k and taking advantage of the match there. But like, I wasn't maxing it. I was just doing so Target would match dollar for dollar to 5%. So I would put my 5%. Great. It was a great match, but I was just getting my 5%. I was putting 5% in. They'd give me 5%. And then, I was still fiddling around, but, we kind of shut down all the extras. My wife and I, we're not throwing any more into your random trading account here. Like, we're going to take all that extra money, and we eliminated our car loan, and we eliminated all those student loans. And the cool thing is we were able to eliminate all those debts in about 2.5 years after I graduated, between my working, her working as well, and the side hustle income that we were bringing in, eliminated all of it.
Why? So why is that important? Why can you just let it go for a bit, pay it off slowly? Is that not an option as well?
It's totally an option. And I think you just have to look at the math. I think, her analytical mind is like, 6.8 interest rate. So like by eliminating that, it's like a guaranteed 6.8% return. I think the car loan was even better. I think the car loan was like 1.9%, like nothing, but it's like, it's $700 a month because it was like a 3-year loan. And it was like, why don't we just get rid of it? Just pay that off. Like we can, like, what's the point of having this payment? And so like for me, I think I was very much in a payment mentality at that point in time in my life. Like I could afford all my payments, my income.
Just cash flow, right? Cash flow is good. Boom. You just put it here and there. Yeah.
Whereas she was very much like an assets and liability mentality. And like we can throw all that extra money into savings and investing and like really grow that over time.
Because you didn't have any goals at this point for your future financially or anything like that?
Not terribly.
Like personally, you didn't. Yeah.
No, like not terribly. It was really as we started getting together, like our first goal, it was really my wife's was like, get rid of all this debt. So she was also blessed that she didn't have any student loans when she graduated. Her parents were able to pay for college. She had scholarships like her first 2 years, and then she went to the state school, and it wasn't too bad, and her parents paid for her college those second 2 years. So, yeah.
Wow. So you're starting the blog in university at this point, and when you're done, like, is it getting traction already, and what are you writing about at the start?
Yeah, so I started my senior year of college, and it was just one of my many side hustles at the time. I was very passionate about earning and investing, and so I was always reading Yahoo Finance, and I was reading other personal finance blogs, and I was like, I can start one too. Like, in my mind, I could. And so I was like, I'm going to share my random trading and investing ideas, which I had some success with at that point in time, with the world, right? Like, who doesn't want to hear what some 21, 22-year-old has to say about investing? But I was going to do it. And that's really what perpetuated me to start it. And my first blog posts were all that kind of stuff. It's like, you should buy XYZ stock, and here's why I think you should. And this is where I think it can go. And it didn't go anywhere, but I was very passionate about it, and I kept at it.
And the domain, like, was it College Investor at that point?
That's why my site is called The College Investor. Literally, I was in college and I was an investor. So
that's it, and that was available at this time. What year is this, by the way, that you would have started?
This would have been 2009. There were 10 years this year. Yeah.
Yeah, 10 years. Yeah. So I guess, is it The College Investor or College Investor?
It's The College Investor. To this date, I still can't get that domain. It's there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, somebody's got it. Okay.
Someone's got it. They won't sell it. They won't contact me. I've tried. So, live and learn. But, hey, what are you going to do?
I feel you. I own investwisely.ca. It's my website. Investwisely.com is actually also owned by a Canadian, and it's just got like a picture of a house or some kind of property that they're selling. And I reached out and I said, hey, are you going to do anything with this? And they're just holding out. I don't know if you did the same thing to your College Investor.
They just
people.
Won't ever respond. I've tried. It's just
really
it's
even
there. It's ghosted. I have it I watch it from time to time to see if they don't renew it, and they do. So what are you going to do?
That's it, right? I heard that you get enough traffic already, so I think you're all right?
I think we're all right. But you always have to say the College Investor. That's
hey, I'm the Personal Finance Show. The's I don't know. Sometimes that's what you need to get it right. So it wasn't going anywhere though at this point.
No, I wasn't doing anything. It wasn't making any money. It wasn't getting any kind of traction. But it was still a passion project, right? I loved it. I like to share my ideas, so I was still keeping at it.
So you weren't thinking about was this considered to be one of your side hustles at this point?
Yeah, I considered it more like a hobby. Yeah, it was just like a hobby. I had, I think I had some goals in the back of my mind to earn money because you see some of these other blogs. People were sharing their income reports back then even, and it was like, wow, you read these income reports and that's what's possible. So that was really exciting to see. And so I kind of I wanted to get there, but I wasn't going anywhere at this point in time.
So you're paying off all your student loans. So not are you clear now? You're debt free at some point?
Yeah, 2.5 years after I finished school, we paid off all the loans, the car loan, the student loans, and the only thing we bought a house by that point in time, and so we had a mortgage, and that was it though, and everything else, all consumer debt and gone.
Yeah, oh, that's amazing. And so did you start writing about, or you continue to write about all this stuff that you're going through, the paying it down quick? Is that all on the blog as well?
Yeah, so one of the first things I branched out of outside of investing was student loans. So as I'm paying down my student loans, my loan servicer was jacking up my payments and wasn't applying. Like I would pay like extra principal payments and they weren't applying them correctly. They were putting them all towards the interest and
Really?
doing weird things. And I wrote about this and how I was like battling with them and how they were terrible.
Yeah.
Like their customer service was terrible. And like they were lying to me on the phone and like,
Awesome.
you know, like I had to like send certified letters and it was a mess, right? And this blog post was like the first one I think I ever got like a comment on. And like it was like I started getting more comments and like people were saying like, oh my God, that's my problem too.
It's
and
happening
I'm having
to me.
the same
Yeah.
issues. And wow, like this is terrible. And like I've been battling. I mean, so I was like, wow, people like I'm getting people like actually reading my stuff, which is really cool. Like people are commenting, which is really cool. And so I was like, maybe I should write more about student loans. So I think I turned that first blog post into like a series of like 5 different ones all about my loan payoff journeys. And then I started branching out and learning more about student loans. And so I kind of really started talking about how to get out of debt early so that you could start investing and building wealth early. And that's kind of been my philosophy ever since on the site.
Yeah, it's very, very applicable. I mean, do you have stats on the number of student loans in the States right now?
Yeah, I mean, this last year they passed 1.5 trillion in outstanding student loan debt, and that's about 45 million borrowers with student loans. And that number just keeps growing, right? Every graduating class now is just having more and more student loan debt.
And I feel like this deferment thing is just got to be the worst. Is this what makes people's debt grow so fast?
No, the biggest thing that makes people's debt grow so fast is that, well, there's 2 aspects. It's borrowing beyond the ROI of your student loans, right? Yeah. So like when you're 18 years old, you're not thinking about your return on investment. All you're thinking is, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to pay for it however I can, which if it's student loans, it's student loans, right? And it's so easy to get student loans. I remember distinctly how I borrowed my first student loan. I got an email from the financial aid office. It says, congratulations, you got financial aid. Notice they don't say student loans, they say financial aid.
Wow.
Okay. I click this email. I open it up. It opens up the university website, right? I log in. It says, click here to accept your financial aid. And you have to select what you want, which you are actually selecting student loans. Like, you got to put 2 and 2 together to know that. And then you click through a few more screens. You scroll through like a terms of service agreement, like whoever reads the terms of service, we all see those every day. And then you hit I accept. It says, congratulations, you're all set. Boom!
You're the winner.
I
won.
That was like my first year. It was like $12,500 or something in student loan debt in like 5 minutes with like no effort. That's how easy
it is.
That's how easy it is. And so like when you're 17, 18 years old, you get this email, you take out loans, you go to school. You're not putting 2 and 2 together, and that's why student loan debt is a problem. Just like any kind of debt itself isn't bad. If you want to go buy a house, getting a mortgage, it's not necessarily a bad thing. The real question is, can you afford it? What's the value of the house? How much are you borrowing? There's all these factors. Well, the same is true with your student loans. What do you want to do? What career path do you want? How much are you going to borrow? What do you expect to earn after graduation? Like these are all the kind of things that young adults need to be thinking about when they borrow. And the ones that do are usually okay. It's the ones that don't and they borrow $150,000 to go to a private school when they only wanted to be a teacher and they're going to make $45,000 a year. And now they're struggling because they have a massive amount of student loan debt to be a teacher, which didn't require any of that stuff of going to private school and doing all, spending all this money. You could have gone to a community college and a state school and spent $10,000 and been a teacher. It's just we don't walk through what the end result is. We just say, go to college, and don't think about the ROI. Who's
making these choices? Is it the parents? Is it like, you got to go to this great school? Is it the high schools that are saying, oh, you got into this school, so good for you, now figure out how to pay for it?
All the above. So one, we're asking 17 and 18-year-olds to make life decisions, which is challenging, right? What do you want to be when you grow up, right? Like a lot of them don't. Who knows? And that's part one. Is I'm a big believer that college isn't the time to find yourself. It's too darn expensive.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Like maybe you need to take a year and go study or explore, and which is more common in other countries than the United States. Like I was talking to some Australians last year at FinCon, and like in Australia, it's super common that they all take a year off and travel.
You take your year.
And then they come back and go to university. Like we don't do that here in the States, and maybe we should do more of that.
Well, they make some money usually
Right?
during that year, so at least a little bit anyway, right?
Exactly. So I think that's part of it. Number two is like, what are you going to college for? Like, do your research. Like, if you want to be a doctor, go be a doctor. That's great. You need to do university. You need to do special programs. You're going to take out a lot of debt, but like you know what your earnings are going to be after graduation. But the same is true to anything. Do you want to go, even if you want to do something as general as I'm going to do business, I want to go into a business. Well, it's like, an entry-level business career pretty much anywhere is going to be like 40, 50, maybe 60 if you're lucky, but that's like pushing it, right? But you're probably going to be in the 40 to 50 range, entry-level salary at like some white-collar business job. Okay, well then don't go borrow more than that. My rule of thumb is don't borrow more than you expect to make your first year after graduation.
That's smart.
So if you're going to make 40, well, you can borrow $10,000 a year for 4 years of college. Now, with some math, which that's reasonable amount of tuition, right? But maybe that's not enough. Maybe you need to apply for more scholarships. Maybe you need to go work. There's ways that you can supplement this income as well. Maybe your parents had a little bit of savings and they're going to help you a little bit as you go. Like college also doesn't have to be 100% loan funded, right? It can be funded by your earnings, your savings, your parents' earnings, your parents' savings. You could apply to 1,000 scholarships. Like if you don't work in high school, well, maybe your job needs to be applying for scholarships. And when I say applying for scholarships, I'm talking about applying to like 100 and 150, like a lot, because it's a numbers game, right? Like if you have a 5% conversion rate of a scholarship application, we'll apply to 20 and then you're going to get one, right? And then if you apply to 40, then you're going to get 2. Right? Like the math is just, if you apply to more, you have a higher likelihood of getting a scholarship.
Teaches you a bunch of skills too for the future, right? Like calling and selling and marketing yourself and all that kind of stuff too.
Absolutely. And so like, I don't want to dismiss anyone from going down any certain career path. Like we need teachers. We need art historians. We need some of these liberal art majors. We need professional academics. Like we need those in our society. But on the flip side, you don't need to spend $150,000 to be any of those careers. You can also do it with different paths and different ways to pay for it, right?
Yeah, it just seems like so there's two situations that you got the kids, you got to figure out what it is you want to do. Well, that might be hard. Mm-hmm. So if you don't know specifically, like if you're not like this passion like I want to be a doctor, then maybe don't go. There's like hold off. Wait till you do figure it out.
Go work, or go to a community or a state school and take out your general education classes. Knock them out for cheap. Right? Because like in California and a lot of states now, I mean, going to a community college is so cheap, and many states are making that free, and you can knock out your general education classes. Same thing with your in-state schools. Live at home maybe, and like, go for really cheap and even see if college is worth it, because maybe college isn't for you, but maybe you weren't exposed to other career opportunities, and maybe just getting outside the house a little bit, going out on campus will expose you to something that you're actually more passionate about that you didn't know at first.
Yeah. So if you don't know, don't do it. Like if you're not 100% sure, don't do it. And then don't be, I don't know, maybe did shows like Community make community colleges look bad or something? Like we have a different options here in Canada, right? It's like, it's cheaper to go to a really good university here, of course. Right. And colleges they also have great programs if you know specifically what you want to do, right? So it's like, in my opinion, in my view, in Canada, university is for like the more broad degree that everybody knows about, and the college is like, I want to be a catering manager, I want to work in sports and entertainment, right? Those kinds of things. So they're great for adding on, or where to start if you have a specific job that you want to do. None of it is extremely expensive like the Ivy Leagues in the States. And I just wonder, why do we need these amazing universities if they just throw people into debt? Is it just for the rich people? What's happening?
Well, I mean, I think everyone has the opportunity to go even to an Ivy League. Where I think the problem is that colleges view students as customers, right?
Yeah, okay.
And so when you're looking at customers, it's a business. So how am I going to compete for customers? Well, like 20 years ago, the main competition was academic rigor and, how an academic program is viewed. So these colleges were investing in great professors. And then, to entice a professor, well, you got to give them some assistance and you got to give them a research budget. So, that costs money. Well, then you pass that money on to the students, right, in form of higher tuition. Well, once, you had a lot of colleges have great academic programs, well, then it's facilities. Like we need to have the best, facilities and lecture halls and technology on campus. Well, that costs money. And then you pass that on to the students. And now today it's like, well, we need to have the best dorms and recreation facilities and athletics. The same thing, like we're investing in all that and that costs money. We're passing that on to the students. And so you have this competition among all the schools, and they're passing on to the students, but the colleges also know something. They know that students can pay any amount of money to come to school. And it's not just for the rich people. Even the poorest person in America can borrow up to the cost of attendance to pay for school. So as long as the universities set that cost of attendance, they can keep raising that. They know that everybody has access to their program. And that's the problem that we have today is that there's been this competition, and they know that the customers can pay any dollar amount to go there. And so we really have two problems, right? We have to lower the cost of, education, but then we also need to lower the amount that people should be able to borrow. And then we need to train the customers, i.e. the students, how to calculate whether that amount they borrow is worth it or not.
Yeah. So, of course, the student loan companies, there's several in the States?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have federal student loans and you have private student loans. So all federal loans are, backed by the government. They're government loans. Yeah. They're serviced by third-party companies, but they're government loans. And then, there's about, 25 different private student loan lenders. If you count like credit unions and banks, there's hundreds because credit unions. But we can do banks here too, but you have specific companies that like Fannie Mae is that's the one, right? Well, Sallie Mae is the
Sallie Mae.
Yeah, Sallie Mae
what's the other one?
Fannie Mae is a mortgage lender.
Mortgage. See, that's so confusing, right? And they all sound so nice.
Totally,
don't
right?
they?
It's Sallie Mae, so nice.
So, yes, so you have these companies that are just taking it. Well, it sounds like they're all working together with the colleges and universities, like. Hey, we'll charge more and then we'll give them money.
I mean, the other issue in the United States here is that most people don't realize what the collateral of a student loan is. So when you get a mortgage, the collateral is the house, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't pay your mortgage, well, the bank comes and repossesses the house. Same is true with a car note, right? You get a car loan, you don't pay your car loan, the bank repos the car, right?
Yeah.
Well, the collateral on a student loan is your future earnings. And so this is why, on one hand, banks and places love lending because historically earnings rise. So like betting on a college graduate, like all the studies show, right? You graduate, high school graduates make one amount, and then college graduates usually make double the amount of a high school graduate. Their earnings typically go up, yada, yada, right? So like if you're a bank, like betting on a college student is usually a good bet. But on the flip side, most people don't realize if you don't pay your student loans, the collateral is your earnings. So these banks can garnish your wages. They can take your tax returns. They can take government payments. They can sue you and get a judgment against you to take any other earnings you might get. Like if you did have a house and you sell your house, they could collect some of that money if you had any money in it, right? So people just need to realize what they're taking a loan out on. And that's what I don't think most people realize. So it's not that the banks are in cahoots. It's just that, the schools know how the system works. And the banks think that taking a loan out, a student loan, is a good deal because, mathematically, you arbitrage this out over everybody. It is a good deal as long as it's done right. It's just a tough situation.
You got your $1 trillion. Where does it end, right? So you wrote about all this stuff on your blog. You started getting the traction on the student loan stuff. Obviously, you're the student loan expert now, right? It's pretty clear.
Yeah.
How long did it take? But your work, where are you working you're working full time somewhere
I'm working
else.
full time at Target. Yeah.
Yeah, you're still
I'm just
like
doing all this. Yeah.
the Target. Are you still working at Target?
Yeah. So I worked at Target for 17 years before I left. Right. From high school
That's
till I
incredible.
left. Yeah, I liked it. I mean, honestly, great company to work for. I found the job to be pretty easy. I liked who I worked with, so that was all good.
And you're making decent salary, it sounds, too, right?
Absolutely,
and now you have no debt, and you're writing about student loans and how you should pay them off. And the blog just starts getting more traction. Was there like a real catalyst that made it take off?
I had a couple of catalysts over time, but one of the first ones was just connecting with other bloggers online. So I found a forum. I started networking. This was about the 1.5 year mark. So I'd already been doing it for a while, and I wasn't getting a lot of traction. But then I started networking with other bloggers and learning about like actually blogging, not just like money, right? So like, how do you market a blog? How do you
the business, the
business side of it. And then it was like eye-opening, and that was a big turning point for me. Learning that I should network, I should share other people's stuff. Then they'd share my stuff, and then if I link to other people, they might link back. And then like you can, if you share and tweet at people, like maybe they'll share your story like somewhere else. And like just learning these basics of marketing went a long way to catapulting my blog. And then I went to my first FinCon, and I had the same kind of thing in person, and meeting and networking with people and learning even more. And that these kind of things, this networking and connecting with others and collaborating, really was the turning point for my site.
And you kind of stuck to the student loan stuff. Was that really the meat of everything?
Yeah, I mean, it was student loans and personal finance. And like I said, I just refined my mission. My mission is really helping people get out of debt early, helping people navigate paying off their student loans so that you could start investing and building wealth early. Because we all know the math, right? The math's like, if you can start investing at 22, it's so much better than investing at 32. I really just wanted to help people find that balance of paying off their debt, navigating this complex world of student loans, and trying to put some extra money towards their investments. They could get out of this in a really positive way.
So you learn about the business and you learn about how to start making money doing this. Eventually it starts making a decent amount of money that you can think about leaving Target?
Yeah. After I started networking with other people online. So year 1, I made no money. Year 2, I think the site made about $7,000, which was huge. And I remember my first
sounds
month.
Like a lot.
Yeah. My first month, I made like $25 on AdSense, which is like Google ads, right? And I was like, oh my God. And I ran out, and my wife was in like the family room. I remember I was like, I made $25. And she just looked at me and she's like, you've been doing this like a 1.5 years, and you just now made like $25. Like, that's cool. Like, whatever.
This sounds so familiar to me.
She's
now.
like, I'm glad you're having this wonderful thing. Like, meanwhile, you've devoted hours of our lives to this, right? But whatever. I was super excited, and she was mildly amused. And so then it just continued to grow from there. And so I actually started making more on the site. Then I made it my day job before I left my day job for about 2 years. And so we just continue to I'll pay off everything and then save for the future. And then I finally just decided it wasn't worth it to continue to be at my day job. Even though I liked my day job, my kids were getting older. We didn't need the income from the day job anymore. So it was like, why am I still working nights and weekends when my kids kind of need me now at home during those times?
Wow. So what kind of traffic, I think this is public stuff, right? What kind of traffic do you get on the site now?
Yeah, so my peak this year was about 3 million visitors so far this in a month. And so that was peak tax season, which is always a big deal here in the United States. That usually we're getting like 1.5 to 2 million visitors a month, non-peak tax season. So it's great. The traffic's doing really well, and the site's doing really well.
That's amazing. And so do you have a team that makes content, or is it you still, or?
Yeah, I mean, I have an all virtual team. So it's me and a couple writers. I have an editor, a social media person that helps, but it's all virtual, and nothing real hard. Just still work from home, and I have a little WeWork space that I use. And
amazing. And so you just kind of built this up, so you hired somebody once the traffic got a little bigger, maybe to help make more content with you and to manage social media? Yeah,
that was my first hire, really, was a freelance writer to help me write more content. So I kind of started learning oh, this content's good. And then I started getting all these ideas, and it's like, well, if I could just keep getting more of these great ideas out there, we might get even more traffic. And I was working, right? So it was I hired a writer to help me try to get more of these ideas out onto the blog faster than I could do just myself.
Yeah, so you were just getting excited about this and decided to keep pursuing it and writing about it because you were getting the feedback. Of course, like everyone's like, "Oh, I want to be like Robert," how do I do that? How do I get 3 million a month? But it's not like you can just go out and make it happen. It's just something that happens over time, and of course, the content that you write, like you said, is good. It's applicable to everybody. Everybody's interacting with it,
right? But I think if you're going to start today, right? Like, let's just say you're going from nothing and you want to start it, and this applies to blogging, podcasting, YouTubing, any hobby that you want to turn into a hobby, any creative thing that you want to turn into a side hustle. My rule of thumb is you need to do your thing 3 times a week, every week for an entire year. Okay, maybe it's 2 times a week, but you get the picture. It's consistency and time. And if you can do something consistently for a long period of time, and I put the year mark because that's a long enough period of time, 2 things happen. One, you get a lot better at your craft. Because like your first things suck, whether it's a blog post or a podcast or a YouTube video, it's just not going to be great. But you do this for a year, you're going to be pretty good at it. You might not be an expert at it, but you're going to be a lot better than when you started. And then number 2 is that you also have been doing it consistently enough that you probably have a little bit of an audience and that they realize that you are consistent. And so they'll come back and check in more and more. Because what happens so often is like you get a blog or a podcast or a video channel that like starts and they put out like some really great content and then you like it as a reader or consumer of the content. And then you check back in like a week and there's nothing there. And then you check back in like a month, and well, that's like they're never going to come back to you. And because you didn't have the consistency to continue, you're not going to build that audience that you could have built if you were just at it consistently. And that's the key. Like here I am 10 years later, and I've been consistently putting out content at least 3 times a week, if not 5 times a week for 10 years. Wow. And so like even when I first started, I don't think I was great at the very beginning, like for the first, but once I learned about a year in, like it's been at least Monday, Wednesday, Friday, every single week for 10 years, 9 years.
Yeah, and of course, like it doesn't matter how much you put out if it's not good. So you have to have that talent in the first place, right?
But you don't get good until you do the work.
That's a good point.
And that's the hard part that most people don't realize is that, I mean, you hear it, and I'm not the only one that's ever said this, is like, your first thing you put out there is terrible. But the cool thing with the internet is you just delete it or you edit it if it's not great. Yeah. If you don't like it, go delete it or edit it or change it or make it better. And so like, there's definitely options here. You're not putting a book out in print that's going to live like that for eternity, right? You can change things and move things around or iterate and learn. But if you don't start, you're never going to get better. Like
just get it out there, right?
Right.
Yeah, just get going. And the consistency, I feel it makes a lot of sense to me, right? Because I got a bunch of content on my site, but I'm not consistent with the blogging. I've been doing consistent podcasts weekly, which I can see the growth there. But the blog has regular traffic, but I can imagine how much more it would have if the people that came that one time 2 years ago and then came back the next week looking for another post, or 2 days later looking for another post and found it, they stayed, and all those people just stayed.
Right.
I can see that. I can see how that would just compound, and that's how you get to 1 to 3 million people a month.
Right. Yeah. Like every blog post, might add 1 to 2 visitors, or every podcast adds a few listeners here and there. But then the next week you do it again and you get a few more listeners plus the original ones. And then the next week you do it again and you do it again. And so, and then every now and then you get lucky and you knock one out of the park, right? And you get picked up like a media mention, or like one of your podcasts gets shared by a big influencer, and then you get an influx. But then if those influx of people don't have anything to listen to the next week,
they're not going to stay.
They're not going to
It makes a lot of sense.
Stay. And the only way you're going to get there, it's all an odds and a statistics game at some level, right? So it's like maybe you have a 1% chance of being picked up by like a major media. Right? Like I'm talking like the national news or a big time influencer with like 10 million subscribers, right?
Sure.
Well, if you don't create 100 pieces of content you're not going to get your 1% chance. You're not going to get that one article that gets shared or that one podcast episode, right? So like you have to do the work to get out there. And you know what? We hear those overnight successes, which, everyone sees, like this guy, blogged for 3 months and is making $1 million. Well, you know what? Same thing as statistics. Like, yes, there will always be that one person that hits the lottery.
yeah.
But like,
they're not the standard. And,
right.
And the reason I like your story is because, and the reason I like to tell everybody's early story, you just started writing and you figured out you were good at that and you were consistent and you were working at Target.
Right.
It's not, it's like, it kind of tells you that, hey, just get started because, it could be you and you don't know. Right? Would you agree with that?
I 100% agree with that. And just the cool thing with the internet today is that you can start things with zero cost. Well, like maybe like a couple bucks, but like the cost is nothing. It's not like the old days where like I always like think about like what was this like in like the turn of the century of like the 1900s. If you wanted to start a business, it was like you need to like build a store, right?
Yeah, seriously.
Like you don't have to do that anymore. If you want to sell something online, you could go on eBay right now and sell something, or go on Amazon and sell something. Like there's so many options out there that it takes your time. And a lot of people have a hard time committing the time, but if you can invest the time, you can do anything today. It doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, you didn't have like a crazy wealth in your family or any kind of special opportunity. You just took advantage of what was there.
Exactly. I mean, I started the blog.
And wrote about you. You wrote about yourself.
I wrote about myself. I started the blog with a free WordPress theme. I think I was on one of those cheap, like $2.95 a month hosting plans. I think when I finally invested a little bit outside of the free theme, I paid $5 on Fiverr to have like a logo created. You know, like, so like there's so many ways to start for cheap.
Yeah, that's it's great. And so thanks for coming on and telling your story. And I like that you're trying to give back and make sure people don't get into so much debt. I wish it wasn't such an epidemic in the States right now, but you're doing what you can.
And that's it. And I think, if we can get to more young adults, and then, as we teach people how to navigate the repayment, the debt's not bad. I think 51% of Americans qualify for some type of loan forgiveness. So like you see these debt statistics, but if you're half of Americans with student loan debt, you could get your loans forgiven, but they don't know that these programs exist and they don't know they're out there. So hopefully they Google it, they find our site, because
Absolutely.
With money too, there's such a psychological impact. It takes that motivation and that knowledge to take action. And so like when you're drowning in debt, like hopefully you find that inspiration tonight and you pull out your smartphone, you Google like how to get out of student loan debt, and maybe you'll find our resources and start down the right path. But it's definitely not an instantaneous thing, but there are lots of ways to navigate it successfully.
So other than Google, thecollegeinvestor.com?
Go to thecollegeinvestor.com, or pick your social media, podcast listening station, or YouTube if you like to watch. We're trying to do more videos over there as well.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks again, Robert. This is really great. And I'll see you at FinCon.
Yeah, I will see you in a couple months, and this was so much fun.
And that was episode 87 with Robert Farrington. If you like the podcast and want to see me get to episode 100 and beyond, please support the podcast by going to my Patreon site and becoming a patron. It's only a few bucks a week, but if enough people do it, it starts to add up. Head over to patreon.com/BoHumphreys if you're interested. I am now offering free 15-minute personal finance consultations online. I'm a personal finance coach, so if you're looking for someone to help you get organized, head over to BoHumphreys.com and click on the banner to book a free 15-minute personal finance consultation. We'll chat about your financial situation, and you can decide if booking an hourly coaching session is something that might help you get moving in the right direction. That's it for this episode. I'll be back next week with Erica Young of Tailor Made Budgets.